Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. In today's episode, we're going to be putting the finishing touches on the university town we've been working on over the last few episodes. And I think everything's come together rather nicely down here. We're also going to be completing that last transitional area I mentioned in the previous episode, which, as it turns out, is going to be a golf course, which is going to be built right down here. But the real highlight for today's episode is down by the water. We're going to be creating a beachside community featuring its own lighthouse. My name is Gyves, and let's get started. The very first thing we're going to be doing in this episode is adding a few more houses to the university town up on the hillside here. This is nothing too special. It's just building up into the hillside a little bit. Now, I've been having a few issues with the simulation since the update. You'll notice that during the course of this episode, the population bleeds out about 20,000 people. It's a kind of a slow bleed, and I have to say it's a little difficult to actually pinpoint exactly what's causing the issue. I know there's a bit of an adjustment with the update, and I thought the game had already balanced itself out, but apparently not. We're still balancing, so that's going to be happening. Also, I think by the end of the episode or shortly after it, we actually start losing money, which is the first time that's happened in a very, very long time in my game. We're not in any danger of going bankrupt or anything. As you can see, we're flush with money. So it's just a matter of pinpointing exactly what the issue is. Okay, so what I'm doing down here is I'm just like setting the groundwork, so to speak, for the actual town we're going to be building. And I wanted to do something a little different down here. I didn't want a beachside community with like docks and boat access and that. We've already done that a few times, and we're going to be doing it many more times as we build up along the coastline. So what I thought I'd try for here was a cliffside type of community. It's not like the highest cliff. We're talking maybe 20 to 30 feet at best. So not a lot, but a bit of a drop. So it's just going to be this little where these two roads come together right down here. The idea I'm going for here is houses and like small hotels and bread and breakfasts looking over the bay. Another new issue that I haven't really had to deal with at all is there's absolutely zero commercial demand in the city right now. So unfortunately, these businesses don't fill in with actual shops and stuff. There's not a lot I can do about it. It's unfortunate because the commercial aspect of this little town is it's a tourist town. It's the beach that's going to attract everybody, but there's no way in game to actually make that happen. So I'm kind of stuck here for the moment. Now, this little island out here, I was like trying to figure out a way to make, how can we make this a little more interesting looking than it is? And I was thinking, what if the island, say at low tides, is connected to the mainland, and it's only at high tide that, you know, it's cut off. So that's what I'm trying to do here. We're going to do a bit of manipulation with the terrain to make that happen. I'm imagining this as a sandy beach. Although this is going to change a little bit as we go here. You'll see what happens. Because I can't get any functioning commercial buildings out here, I'm going to be using a few static buildings just to fill in some spots. These would be like actual functioning hotels and beachside resorts and stuff. Unfortunately, like I said, there's no real way to make these truly functional in game yet. Hopefully that's something that will happen reasonably soon. Now for these like UK pubs and stuff, I'm imagining these are recreations of UK type pub looking buildings and stuff. They're not like unique, or they're not like architectural styles that are part of this actual area. It's just somebody's made a pub to look like a UK pub, if that makes sense. We're going to be using some of Gaga XM's surfaces here to do some beach work here that's more suitable to the Pacific Northwest region. Sandy beaches are definitely a thing, but they're not the norm. A lot of the times it is gravel and rocky, not so sandy. I don't tend to use the little rocks that much, but in this case they came in very handy. We're going to be using Harbor Master J's pier here to create a connection between the island and the mainland so people can access the island during the high tide. I don't get too fancy with this. It's just to indicate that there's a way for you to get across here. And I kind of like how it's just very low to the ground and it just cuts across like that. I think that looks really nice. I use this technique over on the private islands, the rich people's homes on the smaller islands. These rock surfaces were an asset from the Thunderstore, so quite a while ago. I believe they belong to Broman. They're not functional with PTX mods, unfortunately, so I had to find the surface textures and recreate them. So they're not mine. I wish somebody would release more like assets like this on the mod store. I think people would really like things to create like rocky surfaces and stuff. I think a lot of people would find a lot of use for them. Hopefully that might happen sometime. And we're going to use this Real Vision decal down here. I think it really looks like seaweed and algae and stuff. It's perfect. Now this isn't going to be a functioning road connection. I just need to look like there's a way to get from the mainland to the lighthouse. The lighthouse is going to be completely built out of prop buildings. It would be great if I could somehow turn it into a functional like tourist attraction, but at the moment there's just no way to do this. Now along the coastline, during the wintertime, the storms would get quite violent and lots and lots of dead trees wash up on the shore all the time. So I'm going to put in a couple here. I probably could have put a few more, but sometimes more is less. Now, the reason why we need rocky surfaces is, I think this highlights this very well, what I'm doing down here. This is very common along the shoreline in the Pacific Northwest. Basically, the wave action has scoured away all surface material off the base rocks of the islands and stuff. And yeah, we need rocky surfaces in order to do this. So if there's any modders out there or people into creating surfaces and stuff, this is something I think people would really appreciate in game. Now, somehow I've missed it here in the editing, but I accidentally changed the sand color on one of the surfaces to this. I think this is the sand color from the game. And when I looked at it, I'm like, you know, The Pacific Northwest sand color, like, it's not really represented. Like, Sully's sands colors are excellent, but they're not really quite right, and this seems much more appropriate. I need to create a proper foundation for the actual lighthouse. So we're going to use these pillars here, and we're just going to like place them together so they create a kind of cube. Now this lighthouse is also from Harbor Master J. It's kind of a clever assemblage of parts, and it plays the part of a lighthouse quite well. It just needs a quick little recolor here. Now, it is a little temperamental, and yeah, that will happen with it. So the best way to work with this is make sure you place it, it's the last thing you place in your build. I noticed since the update, the water now has highlights, where you can see like the little sparkling highlights with the sunlight hits it. Very nice touch. It makes it much more realistic looking. I know there's faster ways to put down trees. There's something about hand placing them that it's hard to explain. They tend to look a little more natural hand placed than they do like mechanically placed by the game. Of course, when filling in a larger area, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and hand place all this. I'm going to use the tree brush. Along the edges and stuff, along roadways and stuff, I prefer doing that, even though it's very time consuming. Okay, let's try placing this lighthouse again. And there we go. It sits on the landscape very nicely. Now the gravel surfaces I'm using here blend in much nicer with this particular sand color than the other ones. So that's also a nice bonus. Now that we're building along the proper coastline of the region, we're going to be switching to this, I think, more natural sand color for the area. It makes a little more sense. Also, in this part of the world, a lot of the beaches aren't sandy at all. It's gravel, it's rocks. So as I build farther up the coastline, I think that's going to be the predominant beach surface moving forward. Now it's pretty steep in here, so to get to the beach, we're going to need some stairs. I didn't spend a whole lot of time placing these. I just placed them in a way that they looked plausible. They're not functional or anything like that. If we ever do get like functional stairs or surfaces where Sims actually will walk up and down them, I'll probably come back and revisit this. If I tried to draw a path down here, first off, the Sims wouldn't go down there because there's no reason for them to go down there. Also, they would sink into the stairs and stuff, and it wouldn't look very good anyway. I'm just going to put in a little bit of a fence here so people don't fall off the edge. And we're going to keep the trees very close to the ground here. I don't want the view to be blocked too much. I'm going to put in a few trees around here, but it's going to be much more open than what I typically do with trees. That's a great view there. Now, I did already use this tea house in town, not that, just a couple episodes ago. I'm going to reuse it here. It makes sense. I have imagined like the strip right along the water there would be all these like really trendy little cafes and coffee shops and all that sort of stuff for all the tourists. We're going to make the patio on this pub here a little more special than it is. I'm also putting down some signature buildings here. My thinking here was perhaps these might actually attract people to come out to this area because nobody wants to come out here. I don't think it's working as intended, to be honest. Or at least how I was hoping it would work. I don't think it's actually doing much. Yeah, I have to pay more attention to the simulation now, which is not something that's not something I've had to do for quite some time. I'm going to be snaking a bit of a path network behind here. What this is actually doing is creating a bit of a shortcut so the Sims that live over there have access to the rail station, and they use it. Could put down some logs here. This is pretty common to use logs as kind of like a backrest for people to sit down at the beach. And I do have a little bit of jank left over from when I created the map. Unfortunately, there are a couple of spots where I kind of missed the properly editing the map, and this is one of them. So we're just going to come in here and build that out a little bit. Okay, we'll come back to the detailing on that a little later. We're going to move on to the golf course now. Now, I said at the end of the episode, yeah, we had one more transitional area to build out, and that is actually going to be the golf course. A lot of people don't really think of golf courses as transitional spaces, but that's exactly what they are in many communities. They're a lot of times built on marginal land that's not suitable for any other purpose. And in this particular case, we can imagine, since we're right next to the wetland here, we could imagine that maybe the water table down here is extremely high and making it unsuitable for any other land use. And that's how the golf course ended up here. Also very common is attached to these golf courses is sometimes small communities, which are essentially retirement, usually the retirement communities for people who like to golf, so they can live right on the golf course. And that's what I'm going to be building here. The houses are going to be fairly repetitive. Obviously it's a development built by one developer, so everything is going to be matchy down here. For the actual golf course, we're going to be going with a 9-hole golf course. I don't have enough space here for 18 holes. Also, I don't know if it's really necessary. You got to think of the scaling in game. 18 holes would take up an immense amount of space in game. And to be honest, I'm actually starting to run out of space to build things, at least flat areas to build things. So I have to become a little more aware of that. I'm going to be using paths here to place out where I think the holes might go. Now, I'm going to say right up front, I know nothing about golf, and I'm not really particularly interested in golf in any particular way. So I did pretty minimal research here of how to lay this out. I'm going for a look. I'm not trying, at the moment, golf courses are purely decorative. So that's all this is. If we ever get the option to actually make functional golf courses, maybe I'll come back and revisit this. But for the moment, yeah, it's just here for the look and nothing else. And I'm sure there's all kinds of issues and problems with this. But like I said, I know nothing about golf. And once we're done, we'll just delete out the path there. What I'm really going here with the golf course is I'm going for a particular look that's very familiar if you live in the Pacific Northwest. It might be for a golf course. If you might not, this might not be what you'd immediately would imagine, but for this region, this is pretty common. I'm sure there's other places in the world where this is also common, but this, for the Pacific Northwest, this is very much so. Now, I had to use graph surfaces that were available. The semi-transparent ones are not suitable for here because that white rocky surface will show through. That you wouldn't see that on the golf course. I'm okay with the colors except for that bright green spot there. I'll keep my eye open for if anything else comes along that I maybe can replace that with. And of course, a golf course isn't complete without some water features, which we're going to put in right now. This collection of little buildings down here is going to probably be the maintenance yard for the golf course. I'm going to be snaking a path network throughout the entire golf course. Of course, this is meant to be like the pathing to get from one fairway to the next, but I'm also going to be connecting up in a way that allows the Sims to walk between different sections of the city. This actually turned out to be far more successful than I thought. Sims are walking all over this thing, which is great. But it's a great way to hide some shortcuts. Okay, now for the look I'm going for here, we're going to imagine this as if the golf course was carved out of like a heavily forested area. So all the trees in here are going to be fir and pine. I don't usually use pine, but what I'm looking for here is I want a very tall trunk with an exposed ground surface. That's what I'm looking for here, so we're going to go use it. It turns out quite well here. But yeah, this is a fairly common style of golf course in this region where it's just carved right into heavily wooded areas. Now that's a bit of a contradiction to if we're going to go say like a high water table, those two things don't go together. These trees would drown if the water table was that high, so we're going to just do a bit of hand waving here for that. This is going to be like, even though it's carved out of actual woodland, it's heavily manicured and maintained. So we're just going to put in a few like bushes for like ground cover. We're going to keep it pretty light. Like I said, every square inch of this is being kind of sculpted for a golf course. Nobody wants to come down here, so I was trying to figure out if there's any way I could get people to actually come down and use the space. I thought perhaps putting in these park assets, but these really didn't seem to do much. We're using a prop version of one of the nicer European motels here as our clubhouse. Now, I thought maybe putting an actual tourist attraction here might help. And there aren't any real options. So I went with the water park. It's not really what I want here. And the longer I left it here, the more I didn't like it. Also, I realized that it's only a seasonal attraction. And right now we're in the middle of December. So it does absolutely nothing. In and around the clubhouse for the golf course, we're going to do a little extra landscaping here. Imagine this as a nicely maintained public garden where people can come and hang out and look at all the exotic plants and stuff. That was an accidental recolor, but I decided to keep it. I think it looks really, really nice. I thought a little outdoor stage here would be nice for some public performances and stuff like that. Okay, we're going to just do a bit of final detailing around the town here. The town doesn't have a name, if anybody has any suggestions. I'm still looking for a university name as well, or sorry, the university town. I don't name it here in the episode, but for the actual little peninsula with the, or whatever it is, where the lighthouse is, that's going to be known as Lantern Rock. Now I did add a few extra trees, but I'm keeping it really sparse. The star here is the actual view, so I don't want to block this. But it also felt a little too barren without any trees at all. And like I said, I imagine most of these places to be little restaurants and coffee shops and stuff for the tourists that would come down here. I imagine this to be a little historic building of some sort that's here for a reason. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching to the very end. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly did. I'm always surprised by the things I can create here. A little bit of imagination and you can come up with quite a lot of stuff. I will see everyone in the next episode. Until then, bye.